Welcome to Deep Drinks Podcast, where the drinks are deep and the conversations are deeper. Welcome everyone to another exciting episode of Deep Drinks Podcast. My name is Dave, and this is a channel where the guest chooses their choice of drink, and then we drink that together as we discuss deep topics. So this is going to be a good one. Today we're going to get straight into it. We have Reid Nicewonder, who's the president of Street Epistemology International and the creator and host of the YouTube channel Cordial Curiosity. Reid sets up tables, cameras, and microphones in parks and universities, inviting anyone to have a quick conversation about anything they would like, usually an exploration of their beliefs. I've been hassling Reid with questions every few months since October 2017, after first being introduced to one of Reid's street epistemology clips that was shown on an episode of The Atheist Experience. Today, we're going to be learning about Reid's journey, street epistemology, and why Reid is so passionate about it. So that said, welcome, Reid Nicewonder.
All right. Hey, Dave. Glad to be here. Thanks.
Well, this is a bit of a new one for us because we're going to be mixing drinks. We've mixed drinks once before, but we've never done it to such high production value. So, first of all, what are we drinking?
We're drinking an old fashioned.
Cool. And I guess let's get started. So Reid set up a whole drink section with he's got drink cam and a cam, another
let me get over there. It's in the corner. Hang on.
Yeah, sweet. And let's mix up these old fashions. Hey, how's everyone doing? Hey, Ninibus, how you guys doing? What's everyone drinking?
All right. I think this is working.
Oh, cool. I can't believe you've got the tech to work so well. Can you hear me?
Okay. Shoot.
Sweet.
Let me refresh.
Technical difficulties. It always happens with a multi-camera setup. Yes, Manwich, how you doing? Reid's back in.
There we go. Now we can hear. Great.
Cool. Sweet. All right. So how do we make this, Reid? Lead me through it.
Yeah. So let's see. 1 teaspoon of just some sugar.
All right. So I've got sugar syrup, which is what the recipe told me to get.
All right. And then some orange bitters, a couple orange bitters.
All right. Got me some orange bitters. My wife had a 30th birthday party with like 30 bottles of gin and just made gin cocktails, and so we have this left over, and we still have about 30 bottles of gin left over.
Awesome. Get some ice in here. Just go and crush that up. That should be good. And we add.
And then the rum.
Yeah,
what rum are you using?
I'm using Maker's Mark.
Right. I've got Woodford Reserve, which was the drink I drank with Dr. Josh. Introduced me to it.
Nice.
So I didn't measure out my shot, but I'm an Australian. It's Sunday, so I just poured in whatever I felt was necessary.
Dude.
And
going
then
to a Halloween party later tonight. I'll get a little extra.
Yeah, awesome.
All right.
So I really need to have a drink cam. I need to step up on my game.
Right.
So is this like your go-to drink, or is this a second drink for you? Or?
Yeah, this is my go-to drink. Whenever I'm out. Check it out. I got the cube.
Oh, nice. That's so good.
All set. we go. The pool.
You've got the full setup. I love it.
Love it.
So for those who are so for those who are listening on the podcasting apps in the future, Reid has a multi-camera setup, 3 cameras showing every angle as he's putting together this old-fashioned. It's awesome. He's got like everything. So good.
Yep, and I think I've seen it done this in the bars a few times. You just kind of with an orange peel
rub it along there
around the edge there. Drop it in. And usually add a cherry as well.
I don't have cherries, but
no worries. There we go.
So good. Look at that. That is perfection. Mine isn't as perfect, but it's getting there. It'll do the job.
Yeah, no worries. Cheers.
Cheers. Oh, that's good.
It's good.
That is really good, actually.
Yeah.
So
right,
I guess make your and I'll remove the drink cans. Whoops, wrong. I removed the wrong cam. I was actually thinking about getting a dog cam for my little beagle. He's just chilling down here. And so if anyone would like a dog cam, puppy cam, we should make it happen. So Reid, we've been talking for a long time. I didn't realize how many years it's been. So yeah.
Oh yeah.
I guess first, like I've always been interested. I've heard bits and pieces, but I've always been interested in what your journey was actually like. So, do you want to give everyone a bit of a run through about like what did growing up for young Reid look like?
Yeah, sure. I grew up in Bristol, Virginia, on the Tennessee border of Virginia, and grew up.
Is that like that movie October Sky? Have you seen that movie where they like launch rocket? Is that like that kind of area of Virginia?
Not exactly, but that area of Virginia is very familiar to me. That's where my mom's family is from, and my dad's family, kind of.
Oh,
my
really?
My dad, my grandfather's actually owned a whole series of coal mines in that area. If you've watched October Sky, that in modern day, you don't have to actually go down in the mine like they used to. Nowadays, it's all with huge, power tools and trucks and stuff. But I did go to that area a lot growing up as well. And
wow,
accompanying my dad to the mine.
Wow, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So you didn't grow up in that. You grew up in a part of Virginia, but not there. You just went there.
Yeah, I just went there sometimes. When my dad took me to work, sometimes. He was a supervisor of the whole mining operation, an engineer.
Okay, cool. So did you grow up in a traditional Christian upbringing?
I did, more so when I was younger. We would go to a Southern Baptist church fairly often, not every week for sure, but at least once or twice a month until the age of maybe 7 or 8, and then kind of drop down to Christmas and Easter. Yeah.
What's a Southern Baptist church look like in Virginia?
As far as I can remember, it was, just pews, organ music, very kind of somber and serious, and hymns, and then a preacher, one person went up and preached for a while, and then offer an altar call and an offering at some point at the end there.
So was it did you guys believe in speaking in tongues or any of that Pentecostal stuff?
No.
Okay. Right. So were you a pretty, like, in regards to like your personal, like how you felt personally, were you like quite a firm believer, or were you just kind of doing it out of tradition, or like how did you view Christianity from well, I can only imagine that you've had the same brain, but you've got a very, very logical, unique brain, I would say, like the way you think. So how did you view Christianity back then?
I always thought it was weird. It did conflict with what I was hearing in school, in private school, especially the science part. And, we were taught, literal Adam and Eve. And I remember that being very strange, and like a Noah's flood and stuff. And I just kind of took it more as stories. But the God existing itself, I was always wondering, how do people know this? I remember thinking, well, who wrote this Bible? I remember hearing the term the New Testament. I'm like, well, why is there a new one? That was weird. And it was always a pain, really, to go to church. I never really wanted to go, and it was more tradition for me.
Right. So if you were talking to Ray Comfort right now, he would ask you, did you have a relationship with Christ? And it's a trick question, obviously, because if you say yes, then he says, oh, well, you believe in Christ. And if you say no, then he goes, well, told you, you never really experienced Jesus. So, but from your perspective back then, did you have a relationship with Jesus? Did you pray to God or feel anything?
There was one moment where, like during some kind of Bible school or something, when I went, downstairs while the service was going on, they did like a, come to Jesus type moment where they took me by myself and had me pray and say the, all the words to become a Christian. Prayer. And I remember being very emotional at that point, crying. That was the most it ever got in terms of emotionality.
How old were you when that happened?
Maybe 10 or 11.
Oh, right. Wow. Did you kind of know what you were doing back then, or was it just like you were going with what you were told, or did you understand the concept of like forgiveness and all that stuff?
Not really at that point, no.
Interesting.
It was more social pressure, for sure.
So do you think why do you think you were crying then?
I don't know. It was just emotional manipulation.
I like how you just say it like that.
I assume.
It is actually, it is quite nerve-wracking to put yourself in that situation where everyone in the room is like believing in this thing, and it doesn't matter what it is, and then you get it kind of ushered into this moment where the attention's on you, and you're kind of like, okay, like you're going to meet this thing that everyone in this room's talking and obviously believing in. So like even that amount of like pressure is like, even if they were, praying to the flying spaghetti monster, it's still like a whoa, like there might be something here. It's like it can be a very confusing feeling. I remember a moment in youth group where I was praying for one of my friends who came. I was in a Pentecostal kind of church, and I remember one of these moments where I was praying for one of my friends from school who came, and she was crying, but the way she was crying didn't feel like it felt like she was just very confused, because like everyone around her was kind of like slain in the spirit, as they say, and speaking in tongues and all that kind of stuff. And I was praying for her and kind of prophesying over her, and she's just like kind of shocked and crying. And then she didn't come back or anything, but I just remember thinking like that cry wasn't a normal cry. It was like a I'm confused cry. And I wonder if a lot of people have that experience where they're just kind of pressured into it, and then they're looking for like a way to stabilize their emotions, and then they find something to grab onto. I wonder if that has anything to do with it, but I don't know. I'm not a psychologist or anyone in the relevant field.
Me either. Yeah, it's just a lot of build up and then release. It's like you're trying to get a release from it.
So when did you first having doubts about like your Christian faith in general? Like, so it sounds like it was a little bit of like a back burner, like it's there, but it's not like a huge part of your identity. But when did you first start kind of questioning even that small part of your identity that was kind of maybe there?
Yeah, I went to boarding school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, and I took an Eastern religions course. I learned a lot about Eastern religions, Hinduism in particular, and just that was really the first time I dug into that in detail and learning how so many people could believe something completely different from me, these different gods. I went on a trip down to Atlanta to actually visit a Hindu temple and saw, actually people in the flesh and blood were actually praying and, worshiping these gods in a temple, and how they would, give offerings to all of that. And that made me think about a lot of stuff. Yeah.
I had a similar experience when my wife and I first started traveling. We started like noticing like other religions and like how devout some of the followers were and things like that. And it was for me it was quite eye opening. But I remember bringing back footage. We went to China and we went to Zhangjiajie, and there's like a Buddhist temple at the top of like this mountain, and we went to it, and there's got like a female Buddha in there, and then it's got like a Buddha of the past, the present, and the future. So like three big Buddha statues, and they look after your past, your present, and your future, and all this stuff. We bring back the footage, and we're showing some of our friends, and we're like, oh, look at this, like this is, and they're Christian. And we're like, this was so radical. This was like just I've never heard of this kind of religion ideas before. And one of them, I think, got offended at one stage and stood up abruptly, go get a drink of water, and said, I can't believe these people believe this shit. And I kind of just like, I was kind of like, oh, yeah, and just like kept going through the travel footage or whatever. But in my head, I'm like, every religion looks funny from the outside. I mean, like if I was to explain Christianity to them, I would say like, okay, so they believe in a God that sacrificed himself to serve as the loophole for rules that he created that he can't circumvent, because the devil was an angel, and the devil had free will, so he rebelled, and God doesn't want to kill him yet. He wants to kill him later. Like it, and if you're good, you'll go to heaven, and if you're bad, you'll get tortured forever. Like it sounds like, from an outside perspective, it's just like, this is nuts, right? And so I find that I love what the creators of South Park say. They say like every religion looks wacky from the outside. It's only when you get into it that you kind of forgive all the nuances.
Definitely, exactly. Yep, and just trying to see the Hindu temple from their outside, and then looking back from their perspective at Christianity of my own beliefs, it was strange.
So how did you approach these doubts? Like when you saw, well, not doubts, but when you I guess saw that, how did you start approaching those doubts, both emotionally and intellectually, I guess?
At that point, really, I didn't, the class ended and I didn't really think too much about it for a while. Then I didn't really think about religion all that much. Then I went to college, but then I got freshman year, I had an atheist roommate, and I went to film school, and he had the Steadicam, and he was like really cool in my eyes. But like on his Steadicam vest, he had like a cross with the red, no smoking sign on it.
Yeah,
like a bad religion type icon. And I'm like, oh well, that's interesting. But I never really talked to him about religion. I just knew that he was like, it was at the 2005-ish, year. So that was when the new atheism movement was starting to get a bit of traction. And I just saw him being an atheist. That was probably the first person that I saw that I knew who was an atheist. And he was great. He was a great guy. He was one of my best friends. And just seeing that probably did a lot to affect me later on when I did deconvert shortly after college.
Okay, so so he wasn't eating babies or anything like that. Oh, weird. Oh, weird. I thought
Mm-mm.
atheists ate babies. So did you ever talk to him at all about religion, or was that like an after you just kind of noticed that he was an atheist and he was not a psycho?
Yeah, didn't really talk to him about it at all. But he would always wear shirts with, very provocative stuff on it, but never talked to him about it.
His I feel like is he still like that, or was that like a phase?
I don't know. It's probably a phase at that point, but he's still very out there. I'm sure at this point still.
I feel like everyone goes through, everyone who deconstructs usually goes through like what I call the edgelord atheist days, where they just love, like they want to scream. They're like they want to like challenge everyone and like be provocative and stuff. I definitely went through that when I was going through stuff.
Yeah.
So how did you actually? So you had the Eastern, the Eastern things like Eastern religions kind of there, and kind of that kind of it opened you up to the idea that other religions can have different beliefs and they can believe them just as strongly as you. And then you have this atheist roommate who isn't, is just like seems like a normal person. How did you go from that to eventually analyzing your beliefs? Or was it like a long process, or did one day you just wake up and you go, I don't know if I believe in God anymore?
Yeah, this maybe takes a little bit of setup. I went to film school 2005 to 2010. At the end of film school, a bunch of my friends, roommates, and I got it in our heads that we had to make a feature film. So basically, the summer semester right before, what?
Can I just did you go to, I went to film school as well, but I dropped out. But did you go to film school when you were using actual film still? Like, did you have to do film, or is it going to digital at that stage?
It was 2005 to 2010, and that was when it switched to digital.
Yeah.
I remember going to a film school like summer camp in high school, and I used film then. That was a program they offered. But in college, it had just switched to digital, and like every year there was a revolution in camera technology, and it just got getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And at the last year, DSLRs came out that you could just get extremely high quality HD, beautiful looking footage. And I'm like, holy crap, we got to make a movie. So we decided to make one. One of my roommates produced it. The other one wrote it. And my roommate who wrote it is just, he likes really high concept stuff. And at that point he was a Christian, and he wrote this script, and I guess I'll just give the twist away. It takes place in a pre-life world, and there's malevolent forces trying to get at these few people in this high-rise condo. And at one point, they have to make a choice in order to actually get to be born for real in the real world. And, I don't really care what the story was. I just wanted to make a movie, but we shot 3/4 of the movie over the summer. We got as far as we could. And I had a lot of this footage to edit over the next few months. And I just started thinking about the consequences of the actions of the characters and the themes of the story. And at the same time, when I was not editing, I was browsing this new, at least new to me, a website called Reddit. And at the time, the R Atheism subreddit was a default thing that would appear on your homepage if you weren't signed in, or even if you were signed in. I think it was just a default thing that showed up. So as you were browsing, you would see every so often a post about atheism or something. And
I've been banned from that sub like 3 times on 3 different accounts.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Yeah. At the time it was fairly popular. So I started clicking on a few links. Eventually I think I found a few episodes of The Atheist Experience. And that just, at first I was maybe very taken aback by it, very annoyed. Like who are these people to say God doesn't exist? Like what the hell? That's not right. But I was a little curious, and I started watching some episodes, and didn't take long after watching other channels like Mr. Deity, just seeing seeing the whole beliefs laid out, as they actually are, as the logic of it entails, just being parodied in that way. It wasn't long until I completely just deconverted all the remaining bits of my faith, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So was there like an aha moment, or was it just a kind of, you just look back and realize you no longer believed in God, or?
I don't remember exactly if there was a moment. It was just I don't think I believe this anymore. I remember sitting in my chair and then looking outside and thinking, holy crap, we're on a planet floating through space. Like, this is a fragile, precarious predicament we're in. This is it. It's just us together. So that was a bit disconcerting. And then, it just took the next few years just reading up on all the stuff I could find. Started reading New Atheist books and articles, reading other blogs at the time, watching videos, watching movies, just taking it all in.
Right. Do you have any books that, did you have any books that really stood out to you that helped you in your kind of journey?
I like Sam Harris's The End of Faith. That was really good. And just, Mr. Deedy on YouTube, The Atheist Experience, The Thinking Atheist at the time. Yeah. Different podcasts. And just, stuff like that.
Yeah, right. I don't know if I've read The End of Faith, but I read Waking Up, and I used to live in Mount Coolum, and I'd go for walks in the quarry around there with my dog at the time, and listen to that, and it was crazy. Like, Sam Harris is a nut job, like, in the best way possible. It's just crazy. Someone said I could legit listen to Reid TNCs. You've got such a good radio voice. It's awesome.
Thank you.
So so when did you discover critical thinking in this process? Like, did you kind of when did you just discover critical thinking in this process, and like in the journey? Did you, was it through the atheist experience that you kind of started to evaluate those beliefs, and that got you more interested in it, or?
Shortly after college, around late 2011, I moved here to Los Angeles. And the next year, I joined a local atheist meetup club, Atheist United, here in Los Angeles. I started attending just talks from various people. And in late 2013, I went to this talk by this guy called Peter Boghossian. He had this talk about a manual for creating atheists, and he had a book about it. So I read that shortly afterwards, and that really inspired me. And it talked a lot about critical thinking, the Socratic method, and how faith is the linchpin. It's like the kryptonite of religion. People use it as an epistemology. They use it in other ways, but sometimes they use it to justify believing in stuff. And just framing the religion debate, like, I was always watching debates as well, and people would just throw out arguments and stuff, but they would rarely get down to the method of how they're checking the quality of those reasons, and never getting down to the core justification. And a lot of times when you just peel it back all the way, it ends in a kind of, it's just faith. I just believe. And if you try to have a conversation around that and get to that and ask questions around that, seeing if that's a good way to come to beliefs in general. That is an interesting way to have conversations about religion. And that opened up my mind to just thinking in those terms. How do we know what's true? What are good reasons? And yeah, that set me on the path to learn about critical thinking.
Yeah, I remember talking to a Christian friend in a bar circa 2017 or something, and he kind of dismissed. He said two things. He's a smart guy, and he's quite Pentecostal, and he believes that he knows people who have been raised from the dead, kind of thing, like that level of like woo, I guess, fringe parts of the Pentecostal movement, and he says that a few things. He says you have to accept the undeniability of Scripture, because like the perfectness of Scripture, because otherwise you can just throw out the whole thing. And I said to him, well, I wasn't doing a street epistemology, so I just said to him, well, can you see that you've just made an excuse there? You've said, I don't care what reality is, I'm just going to accept this one thing for whatever reason. But the other thing he said was that the Socratic method comes from like Greek thought, and that he doesn't necessarily believe that that's the best way to think about things. So it's like you evaluate, and I was just hoping we could like maybe discuss this quickly as a side tangent, or maybe not quickly. Deep Drink podcast, we do tangents all the time, but how do we justify the Socratic method as being the best way to evaluate, I guess, the world, or like to come to, or logic and reason, I should say, to come to a real understanding of the world? How do we justify that?
It's very similar to the scientific method. You start with wondering about something, like usually a question, and then you offer a hypothesis, some kind of answer to the question, and then someone asks questions about this answer. They try to test it. They try to figure out, what does this answer either predict or infer, and then you ask questions around that. Does this lead to a contradiction? Does this make sense in some way? And it usually comes to either some kind of aporia or dead end, but then you offer someone to revise their answer, and you start over the process again, and you just go through this question and answer process until you're left with something that withstands the criticism. And that's kind of mirroring how science goes about testing hypotheses and having provisional knowledge.
Yeah, I get that, and that's part of the why I accept it. I won't mention their name, but I've had the misfortune of having long email exchanges with a critic of the street epistemology way of SE in general, and they mentioned they were just quizzing me on how do you know, like how can you trust your senses, how can you trust your logic if you use your logic to justify your logic, like all those presuppositionalist arguments. And when I flipped the script and asked them over and over and over again, like, just you need to give me a concrete answer on like how you justify your beliefs. Or no, I said, what's the best way to examine the universe or to come up with answers to the universe? Because I was saying it's the scientific method. They said it's to have faith in to have 100% faith in Jesus Christ. And I said, how does that teach us about the atom? How do we make evaluations of an atom with having faith in Jesus? Like, how does that make sense? Now, it's easy to dismiss that and go, okay, they're just making justify it, like they're just justifying their beliefs with nonsense, or just giving you a throwaway answer. But I sometimes wonder, like, what if there is something to that, and we just can't see, not something to it, that sounds bad, but what if we just can't see well, not even reasoning, what if we just can't see their perspective? What if there's like literally like a block, and that we're viewing things in a way that that only makes sense under a certain paradigm. Does that make sense? Like if you talk to a lot of people who do psychedelics and talk about like quantum mechanics and all this stuff they don't understand, but they have this like other experience. How do we know that that experience isn't the like some real experience, and how we're trying to evaluate things is just a certain it's a story that we're telling ourselves that gives certain answers, but there are other answers out there if you ask different questions.
Jeez. I mean,
sorry. Deep Drinks podcast.
Deep drink, yeah, the drinks in the Deep Drink podcast. I don't know. I mean, you feel free to offer any hypothesis you want. It's the testing of the hypothesis that science emphasizes. Can you predict anything? Can you use it in some way?
Yeah.
How can you tell if you're mistaken? If someone used your same process but concluded something the opposite, how could someone from the outside, seeing both of you, tell what was actually the case? How do we adjudicate any kind of conflict there?
Yeah. And well, I think that it's hard because I agree. I think the scientific method is the best tool we have to examining the natural world or anything. It's the best. But I often wonder if I'm trying to be as good faith to these other people's beliefs as I possibly can. Because like imagine, so just to wrap up this tangent a little bit, but I used to develop video games. When I first started, I was very creative. I was like just bang on with my creativity. I was making this game called Burger Run. You're this fat dude who ate burgers, right? And it was like Mario. And then I realized I needed to learn how to program to make video games, right? So I spent a year just watching programming tutorials, learning how to code. I even trained the way I used to think about things. Nothing was gray anymore. It was black and white. I think that's actually part of the process that led me to question my beliefs is I had to like view things as true or false. And when I went back to actually start making a game, I lost all my creativity. I hadn't flexed those creativity muscles anymore, and I had no ideas were coming to me. And I found it really hard to come up with like the broad brush strokes, the grays in my creative process. And it literally was just a different way of thinking that had different outcomes. So like if you're after like objective truth of the universe, the scientific method's a great tool. But if you want to feel the emotion of a love song, you can't really write that on pen and paper, right? I don't know.
Yeah. I think there's different stages of the scientific method. In the testing part of the hypothesis, you want your results to be unambiguous. Either it's this way or some other way. A bunch of different options. Unambiguous, no creativity. It's just there. But if you back up and go back to the hypothesis creation stage, you want to, for any phenomenon in the world, you'd like to hypothesize, just imagine any particular cause you could think of, generate through your creativity as many hypotheses as possible. So maybe, I don't know how you preserve this creativity capacity, but science requires some creativity as well. Light bending, that's pretty creative. A bunch of hypotheses that turned out to be the case were far out there, non-intuitive. So it requires creativity for sure.
Yeah, that makes sense actually. Like the start of it is like the imagining, the wonder, the what could be. Because you look at like Einstein's ideas and stuff like general relativity and things like that, and they sound just crazy, like they sound outlandish. But the thing is, like they work, the maths works, and the observations come true. You know, well, actually, I don't know if all of Einstein's stuff came true, because we've recently had that new discovery about about quantum mechanics or something. I don't know. Anyway, back to your story. How did you first learn about street epistemology?
Yeah, in 2013, I saw. Well, I think I first heard about Peter Boghossian in the Thinking Atheist podcast, and then I read the book or started reading it, and then Peter Boghossian did a talk in LA, and I didn't really do much in 2014 related to street epistemology. It wasn't until early 2015 that I was watching something on YouTube, but then I saw this video from this guy called Anthony Magnabosco. At that time in early 2015, he was doing kind of a version of street epistemology where he was mainly yelling at street preachers outside the Alamo.
I've looked for those videos. I don't know if they're still there. I tried real hard to look for those videos. I couldn't find them.
You'd have to go into his playlists. I think they're unlisted. So go back to 2015 playlist early. But that was interesting. But then he started doing it, getting feedback from the community in the comments and on Facebook. And he would start asking more questions, and people would slow down and think about these questions. And it was very different from the atheist experience, other atheist debates, and it would see people think. And then he started going to a campus and really developing his style, becoming more open and cordial. And that really got me into street epistemology at that time. I started participating more in the Facebook group, and around mid 2015, this video chat site called Blab was launched. And it's kind of like what TikTok Live is now, where you have up to like 4 people on video and a chat at the same time. And you can just chat with people, and the chat can award people points. And a bunch of us from the street epistemology community just kind of talk with people for a year straight, 24/7 almost. Not much productivity happened in that year, but we practiced street epistemology, and we really started seeing how effective this way of talking with people was.
Side note, I would love to see you with after a few old-fashioned create content screaming at street preachers. That would be so. You release this video of you just screaming it. That'd be so funny. It'd be so good. Because one thing I love about your content is you're so level-headed through it. I've seen one where you've gotten like pissed off, and I'm sure there's a bunch, but there was that one where star signs. I think star signs trigger you the most, right? That's the thing that triggers you. Is it star signs or
astrology? Yeah. Mm-hmm. When people assign personality traits to me, permanent ones, even if they're true, like it's just it's
insulting.
For some reason, it's insulting. Yeah.
So, and it's funny too, because I've sent your video to some friends I used to go to youth group with and stuff. I sent my favorite episode is TIA. TIA. I've watched it about 1 million times. I really love it, and I've got I'll link it in the description. But it's fascinating. And they said they come back with what gives him all the answers, right? Like because they're like they don't understand the concept, and they can see clearly that this TIA girl is struggling a little bit. But what I love is you don't have the answers. In fact, I've seen you have conversations with people about things you believe in. Like I think it was climate change one at the time. And you were challenging them, like you were asking questions to get them to explain why they believed in climate change. And then they kind of got a bit stuck because they didn't have a good answer. And then they asked you, and you said, oh, yeah, I believe it for these reasons. So that's what I love about your content, because you're very... you're very like chill when people watch your stuff, and level-headed, and you got that voice. So do you remember when you first started doing street epistemology? Maybe you can actually just tell everyone what street epistemology actually is, because I gave a short introduction at the start, but like for someone who hasn't seen it, what is street epistemology?
Yeah, one of the official definition we're using now in the course. Yeah, we're writing a course. We've been writing it. Anthony, myself, and another guy, Rom, and a bunch of other volunteers. So module 1, the definition of street epistemology is the long version. You don't have to use this technical version, but street epistemology is a way of applying a set of philosophy and psychology-based tools through civil conversation to help ourselves and others reflect on the quality of the reasons one might have to support their level of confidence that a claim is true. We try to make it, in that long version, something you can maybe scientifically test. A shorter way to say it is like a way to help people reflect on the quality of their reasoning through civil conversation.
So, and so when did you first start like going out into the field and doing these doing street epistemology, like IRL?
I started summer of 2016. I was still volunteering for Atheist United at that time, and there was a LA Times Festival of Books, and we had a booth there. I set up a table and a really janky GoPro and Blue Yeti mic setup, and did it for the first time in public after doing it for a while on Blab, but actually doing it in public with people face to face, that was very different. And after that, I started then going out to the local Griffith Park, just below the Griffith Observatory, set up a table and that same janky mic setup and GoPro setup, and started just talking with people sitting there, letting people come to me, and yeah, practicing, getting feedback, watching myself back on video. I was not the best starting out for sure, and just did that for months, and every week for about 3 hours, and yeah, got like a lot of great feedback.
Is there something that like is the process of SE for you? Is it more about, is it like something that you really enjoy helping people kind of think about their beliefs, or is it because I know that person that's been emailing me say it's like a tool for atheism or it's a tool for something like that, but I know that you don't really hold to that idea. So why is it that you do SE?
Yeah, my goals have shifted over time. When I first started out, I had the expectation that I could potentially like deconvert someone on the spot. That was a really dumb goal to have. I got some people to think, to reflect, some to reduce their confidence a little bit in supernatural stuff. But at this point, if I ever talk about religion or supernatural stuff, it's mainly planting some kind of seed for further reflection. And I'm not expecting them to change their mind on the spot for sure, especially for these core religious beliefs. Yeah, that's not a wise expectation. I do want people to not so much just lose their faith. I want them to be good critical thinkers. And if that results in losing some kind of belief, then as long as you do it for good reasons, that's fine. If you care about believing true things.
Cool. So it's not necessarily about religion either. It's about any belief, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we started realizing this technique could apply to virtually anything anybody said. Social issues, politics. Yeah, it's very versatile in that way.
Yeah. So have you seen a shift in what people... So how long have you been doing this? Like 5 years now, or 5+ years?
Since 2016, so about 6 years.
Yeah, 6 years. So have you seen a shift in what people believe more, or like what people are wanting to talk about more, or less at all in that time?
I started offering my own topics maybe 2017, 2018, a little board next to my table. And I started shifting after November 20. It was very shortly after I started, November 2016, Trump being elected. At that time, I was like, holy crap, that's interesting. So I started shifting more to politics and social issues and all the stuff that was happening in the news. So I would always either have some of those topics on the board for people to pick. So I don't really have a unbiased way to tell. Like if someone just wanted to talk about something, I always had various options for people to pick, and that might have had a selection bias. So hard to know.
Have you noticed? Have you noticed like people have stopped using certain words? Like, for example, like did people used to say like, "Oh, this is natural," or this is it's natural to do this, or it's. Have you noticed that like change a little bit, or like someone started using the words like have you noticed trans issues come into it a little bit more, or anything like that, or is it more been pretty hard to tell because you've had your own kind of topics?
Yeah, I think some of the last year, people are starting to think more about gender and trans stuff. Just last week, I set up my table with a whiteboard and I use these little magnets for people to use to write down claims or questions. And we were doing a conversation, a spectrum style SE, me and Dolly and some other person, and other people are just walking by here at UCLA, and someone wrote, "What is a woman?" as a potential thing to talk about, and stuck it on the board for an option. So that's something that's now in the zeitgeist.
Yeah, interesting. Have you got any horror stories? I hope you do.
Not really, not much. Yeah. One time I was just sitting there in Griffith Park and someone sat down and just flipped me off. They probably mistook me for a Scientologist. I had the sign, "What do you believe and why?" on it, which is very similar to their phrasing and their
or like David
marketing.
Crowder, like, "Oh, here he is again."
Yeah. Besides that, not much. Yeah, it's been fairly nonviolent. Yeah.
What are your favorite conversations, like favorite topics to cover, and what are your least favorite topics to cover?
Yeah, for some reason I still like talking about astrology, even though it makes me mad. It's so bizarre that people take it that seriously. Yeah, not so much religion anymore. Now I want to talk more about social issues related to identity politics. That seems to be a hot button issue that people have hard times talking about. Not so much. I find like domestic policy or foreign policy boring, but I'm open to talking about that. It's the more cultural war issues, wedge issues that are interesting to me.
Yeah. I noticed that on either side of the political aisle, the far right and the far left seem to kind of shoot themselves in the foot a little bit. Like in regards to like, I feel like the far left pushes people to the right, and then the right has that, like, it's got, is there with open arms, and then the far right are so insane that they push people. I don't know. It just seems like in America there seems to be such a dichotomy of thought, like the centrists are growing few in far between. You know what I mean? It seems like but I don't know if that's actually true, or if it's just something I've like witnessed.
Yeah, I think there is more polarization, unfortunately.
And so, is street epistemology, is that like something? Is part of it like to help some of that polarization? Is that what like you're hoping to get out of it personally?
Yeah, I think so. I think if we listen to people more and first listen to understand, then we can find common ground and bring us more together.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any success stories?
Another conversation I had was with this guy called Dominique, and I've never talked to him again, but at the time he seemed to kind of grasp this crucial concept of falsifiability and the value of having our beliefs be testable just right in that moment. And he really thought about that and thanked me for talking about that. That was cool. Besides that, just the general positive feedback I get, maybe 1 out of 10, 1 out of 6 talks that, thank you for helping me think through this. This was fun. And you don't often get a chance to do this. This was interesting. I like what you're doing. I find that to be very nice.
So, I used to binge your videos all the time. I think I watched like every video, like every one of your videos when they came out, I would watch. I loved it so much. I still do watch it, but I was at this stage of my life, I was just binging it. And I remember using some of the techniques, some of the street epistemology techniques, and some of the way that you would present yourself when having hard conversations with not just like my friends and family who may have been religious or whatever, or believe something differently to me, like whether it's vaccines or whatever. But like even like conversations with my managers at work, or like arguments that me and my wife would get into, like we'd kind of use those techniques on each other to try and like get to the root of like where the disagreements were coming from, if that makes sense, instead of like pointing the finger and saying you did this or whatever. Or at work I'll just ask more Socratic method style questions to try and lead them to the conclusion that I think is where my brain is. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Science, broadly speaking, is a kind of a conflict management type of system, and there's always conflict potentially happening in workplaces. You have a problem and management has different ideas how to solve the problem. There's arguments happening, and with SEI, the nonprofit, we're starting to get more inquiries about how SE could potentially help them in their business. Some people are starting to use it, and it sounds like it's helping. But we're still very early on in kind of utilizing SE in this way. It's very new, and I hope to see it grow in that direction.
So do you have any, so first of all, I've got so many questions, but first of all, what is SCI?
Yeah, SEI, Street Epistemology International, is a nonprofit we started in 2019. Anthony Magnabosco is the executive director. I'm the president. FYI, everything I'm saying here is just my own thoughts and beliefs. Being a nonprofit, and
just before we went on live, you were screaming at some people out your window, some street preachers. So.
Yeah, and over the past few years, we've started building up the board. Got a bunch of different projects. The main project is the creation of a street epistemology self-directed course, which has been taking forever, but we've been getting really good stuff. Like, stay tuned. It's really good stuff. And besides that, we're also doing research on street epistemology. A preliminary paper is like almost in the works for that. Besides that, we also help support SE content creators, help fund their efforts. That's been what we're doing.
Right. So, like, if someone wants to, I guess, start doing SE and they don't have the funds, this organization's going to help them, right? Is that the idea?
Yeah, you can submit a request for funds, and we will most likely help you out.
That's so cool. That is so cool. And so the goal of this is just to keep spreading critical thinking and the scientific method, the idea of the scientific method. You don't have to be a scientist to do the scientific method. You can use it in everything. That's so cool. So I guess we could touch a little bit on like why does SE matter, like, for you? So why is it so important for you that you've dedicated so much of your life to this?
Yeah, there are various goals for why use SE. Your own personal goals can be just to better understand other people. Sometimes you hear something someone says, and you can use SE to better understand what they're saying. You can also just, if you care about critical thinking, you can use SE to practice critical thinking with people who make claims. It's a great way to do that. And also, you could use SE as a goal for other people. Sometimes someone says something and you disagree or think it's false. As long as you're open-minded and being willing to be wrong, you can question them about it and potentially help them reflect on the process they're using for that, and potentially help themselves update their beliefs. A kind of persuasion, a kind of way to teach people critical thinking in the moment, and then have them apply those tools to their beliefs. And they not only potentially revise their confidence in that particular belief, but then use the tools they use to do that and apply it to many other beliefs in their life. This, on a societal level, if that starts spreading, people would believe more true beliefs, less false beliefs, and that would be better for society. People vote, public policy affects us all. Our own individual beliefs affect each other, and it would be a better world if our maps actually reflected the reality we live in.
So do you think if do you have like a secret source for, like, say, if someone comes up to you just like at a bar or at the Halloween party you're going to tonight and says something that you disagree with, like, oh, you're a Libra or you're a Scorpio, so therefore XYZ, how do you, I imagine that most of the time you just smile, nod, and kind of go to the cheese board or whatever you do, and like, what, you don't engage. But so let's say you do want to engage with someone, how do you normally start that interaction outside of like a formal SE? Would you have advice for people?
Yeah, that is really the main way SE is done. It's not done on a college campus or in the park. Most of the time it's between individuals, even though I virtually only do it on campus or at a park. And I rarely do it with just random people, even my friends or family. So I actually have very little experience doing that, probably mainly due to my own personality. But I could give advice from the course we've got. It's just, you just start building rapport, make small talk, say something like, oh, that's very interesting. Do you mind if I ask you questions about that? Explain what SE is, and just get consent to do the conversation, and you can just go from there.
Do you have a way that you defuse the conversations if it's getting too heavy? I've had experiences where I've tried to use SE. I was at my wife's work event. These ladies came up. They thought I was still like a practicing on fire believing Christian, and they started showing me footage of someone getting out of like a wheelchair in Africa or something, or like started talking about it on my phone and then telling me how good God is and stuff, and why don't I come to church, their church. And then like they kept asking, and I was like, well, I don't necessarily subscribe to a lot of the beliefs that's from the pulpit. And they're like, oh, what do you mean? And then I'm like, well, do you mind if I ask you about your beliefs? And then we went into but eventually they were both like angry, but I was trying to be as like calm and polite as possible. Do you have a way to defuse those kind of moments, or to not get to those moments?
Yeah, especially with religious beliefs, it's best to not send these messages out from the very beginning, like making it adversarial, or I believe that, I don't believe that, I'm not on your team, not on your side. You could just be more open and curious, and be open to learning more about that. Just pretend like you're just learning about this for the first time. You never knew about this, and even kind of think, they know the truth. I just want to learn. Put yourself in that mindset. How do we know this is the case? And learn more about it. Ask questions. Repeat back. Use active listening. Well, kind of see what the benefit they're getting from this is, and share how that would be really great. If that was the case, that people can be healed instantly, I would love to believe if that is true. I'm just not sure at this point. Can you explain to me how this works, and why do you believe this? How could we know if this was actually potentially not the case? But always doing it very slowly, cordially, and talking to people that way.
Have you ever had? I've had this experience. I'm just wondering if you had as well. Have you ever asked someone about their beliefs in that way, and they say, "I don't know"? So I've had friends who've said that to me that the Earth is definitely flat, and I said, "Why do you think that?" And they said, "I can't remember." I said, "What do you mean you can't remember why you think the Earth's flat?" Oh, I researched it. Okay, or the same with vaccines. Oh, I can't remember. They're just bad. Why are they bad? Like, I'd love to know why they're bad. Like, tell me more about it. Like, I need to, like, if they're bad, I don't want to take a vaccine. Just tell me about why the vaccines are bad. And then, like, I can't remember. I don't know. Have you ever had that? Or was it just my friends?
I'm sure it's happened. It's also good to think about what these kinds of beliefs are doing for people psychologically and socially. If you run out, if you're going down the epistemic road, talking about how they know something, and you get the feeling that they're too uncomfortable or they don't want to talk about it, there's some kind of psychosocial motivation happening around the belief. And it's great to talk about that stuff in a way that they don't feel judged. If you talk about that, like what is this belief doing for you? If you no longer had this belief in a few years, how would your life change? What would be missing from your life? And different thought experiment questions related to that, where that reveals these psychosocial motivations. And because a lot of our beliefs are tied to that stuff, if we haven't thought about it too much. We're human. And if you talk about different strategies for meeting the needs that the beliefs are helping us meet these needs, if you switch them out with, or at least have potential other ways of meeting those needs, then you can go back to start talking more about the epistemology and feel more safe doing it. It relieves a lot of pressure, a lot of bias, and or you could leave it there and then pick up the conversation another time. But thinking of these kind of beliefs in those terms, in addition to the epistemology, is really advantageous.
Interesting. So that is all super fascinating, but I know we've only got like 90 minutes ish. So I want to jump into some Q&A questions. So if anyone's got any questions, make sure to type it in the chat. And I also want to advertise a few things. So everyone make sure you go and subscribe to Cordial Curiosity. It is, I mean, how many videos you've got? Like a lot. I think it was like 150 or something. You've got a lot of videos.
Yeah, the past year I haven't been uploading as much. I've been doing other things. But now for the past month or so, I've been going out once a week for like at least 3 or 4 hours with Dolly, juggling lessons, to record stuff at UCLA. So stay tuned. I've got a bunch of footage and it's coming.
And this episode, Tia, is just amazing. I just really love the way you handle this. Someone said to me, "This man has the best poker face in the world." It's really good. It's really good. So everyone make sure you go subscribe to Cordial Curiosity. And if you want to learn more about SE, all the links obviously in the description of this video and on Reid's YouTube channel here. And there's some cool stuff coming up. I just also want to mention some stuff that we normally mention at the start, but I'm mentioning it here is we have a few cool episodes coming up. We have Nitty, who's in the, I think might still be in the comments here. He's going to be talking about his experience growing up in a cult church kind of thing. We have Biddy Buddha talking about ritual agnosticism, so tarot cards, star signs. She doesn't necessarily believe in them as an atheist, but she likes them. So we're going to be talking about that. It's going to be an interesting conversation.
Oh dear.
And we have What is a Man with student Dr. Ben. talking about transgenderism, Ben's story, and that's going to be an interesting episode as well. And for those who want to listen to these episodes, we have Deep Drinks podcast on Apple, Spotify, everything else like that. So you can listen to it, and this episode will be uploaded shortly after this is finished.
Cool. Speaking of Poker Face, Nitty comes to the Pine Creek poker game I host once or twice a week, and that's been a lot of fun.
I keep seeing the invites for that because I asked to be on the invite list, but I haven't made it yet. It's been like a year or like 6 months or something, just because it's always at times that I can't do it. But, you know, I live in Australia, so it is what it is. For me, it's 11 a.m. So, So if anyone wants to learn more about SE, where can they go? That's the first question. It's kind of a boring question, but it's
streetepistemology.com.
Yeah, cool. streetepistemology.com. And so have you changed your mind on anything as major as your religious deconstruction? So since learning about critical thinking and SE, has anyone like come to you maybe with star signs and now you're a hard believer in star signs or something? Like has anyone swayed you?
As hardcore as the religious deconversion? Not really. I've maybe just shifted from being progressive in my politics to more moderate. That's the most shift. That's the biggest shift.
Okay. And did that happen because of like some conversations you're having, or is it more to do with like the zeitgeist of like what you were seeing around, like how the left and the right were handling things?
Yeah, just various stuff happening and other content I've been watching and talking with people about various issues in person. Yeah, lots of different factors.
Interesting. What, if anything, would change your mind? This is the question I ask everyone.
In general? On the God belief.
God belief, yeah.
Any kind of miracle in control testing conditions, that anything that breaks our current models of empirical theories, like physics. If you do something similar to like 1 Kings 18, I like Pine Creek's example of lighting some kind of water-soaked napkin, lighting that on fire. That'll be a good one. Do that in a controlled testing condition, especially if there's multiple people watching and doing it more than one time. That would be great.
What is it? 1 Kings 15.
It's like the story about how, I forget what, there's a certain tribe. There are 2 tribes. One tribe believes in one God. Another one believes in Yahweh, and they have a competition. You know, if my God is true, he'll light this wood on fire. Well, I know, not only that, I'll just drench my wood in water, and just to make it more hard. And they pray in the name of whatever.
Oh, Elijah.
Yeah, and they light the wood on fire.
It works.
So that would be pretty good.
Right.
Something like that. Or, limbs getting grown back, people coming back from the dead.
Well, have you heard about Jesus? He came back from the dead?
In present day. I need something today.
So I guess I've been asked this question by a street preacher, actually, a street evangelist, I guess, and what would change your mind? I didn't have a good answer at the time. I don't know what would convince you of God's existence, because obviously, like they go, well, if you don't know what would convince you, then that's an issue. But what I ended up thinking about it more because I didn't have a really good answer for it at the time. But my answer to that was, in order for me to believe in the God of the Bible as taking a literal interpretation of the Bible, it would be the same thing that would require me to believe in a married bachelor. And that is, like, because even if the God that you're describing there, like the lighting of the flame, you'd still have all these problems with the Bible, right? Like how do you view the Bible? How does these things make sense historically? Are they historical? Are they not historical? So for me, to take a literal interpretation to the Bible, like the Genesis account of creation, 6,000-year-old, the contradictions that are there, it would be the same thing that I would need to believe in a married bachelor. That is, it seems like a bit of a wish-washy question, but it's like, unless you remove those issues that are there, you can't view it under the lens of like inherently perfect.
Yeah, there's conflict between all good and all powerful.
Yeah,
stuff like that. But I could still be unsure about the essential properties, but there's something out there causing our empirical reality to violate itself as best as we know. That would cause me to question naturalism.
So this is just a random aside again. What do you do when you're talking to like someone like a Muslim or someone say or a Christian, and they say God needed to have created like this universe? Something needed to have created us. It makes no sense that we just came from nothing. What do you say to that person?
I don't know where the universe came from.
But do you agree that it needs a creator? I'm playing devil's advocate here.
No. It could be.
How can something just begin?
It could be the case. I don't know. My intuitions about that type of thing is not reliable.
Yeah, that's a good answer. That's a good answer. I have a Weasley answer as well. To that I say, I believe the universe came from the same place you believe God came from, because obviously they believe God just was. So I just believe the universe either just was or something just was, right? To get past the infinite regress problem. But that's a Weasley answer. That's just to point out that, hey, you don't know either, buddy.
It could have always existed, or someone could have created it. No idea.
We have a question asked before. Would be interested to get the insight into Reid's view on Bogosian's current trajectory. Bogosian's current trajectory. It feels as though there's been a shift in his intent and methods.
Yeah, if you've seen his current YouTube channel, it went from 5,000 to over 100,000 in a few months. I was on the reverse Q&A tour he was on this summer, and it's, it was not an SE themed type of tour starting out, but his original intent was just to hear out, dissident college students around wokeness and critical social justice, hear them out. But we soon found that format was not working very well. And we then started the kind of spectrum format where there's 7 lines on the ground. Everyone starts in the middle. Everyone agrees on the claim they're discussing, and then they move to wherever their confidence is, either strongly agree or strongly disagree. And Peter acts as a kind of SE moderator, and everyone hears each other out.
I think I've seen that video where there was the transgender, there's something, and there's like a viral video, a bunch of students come down from the library and they like confront Peter about that. Is that who I'm thinking?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We were doing some Spectrum SE on the Portland campus, and that happened. And I think that's evidence of some potential bit of bias from certain departments, some problematic attitudes and mindsets, nothing that's very compatible with our preference for critical thinking, being open to hearing people out, stuff like that. So that was part of the goal of the tour, is to see if that was happening on any campus. And we got a bunch of good examples of that. But Peter did that on his tour, got a bunch of good conversations, and now he's in Hungary doing the same thing with people in Hungary, conservatives usually. I'm getting footage from his conversations there right now, and we're planning to do the same thing in full Florida in a few months to get more, stuff from conservatives. So I think Peter is doing SE and helping expose the illiberalism on both sides and trying to figure out some common ground and helping anyone from any side think through their beliefs. And I support him.
Do you think just on that like viral video of the people who were really upset at the trans lines on the ground or whatever, like I don't know what it exactly was, but can you empathize at all with the lack of engaging in critical conversations amongst that, because people may be super sensitive at the moment in regards to trans issues, especially on campuses ever since the days of Jordan Peterson. I think there's obviously an issue personally when it comes to, like, you should always be able to engage in critical thinking, but do you see that a lot of the time members of the LGBT community, and especially the transgender community, have to kind of justify their existence to the world, and that a lot of people, like a lot of their friends and stuff, like, well, that's kind of bullshit, and then they like actively, I guess, they're looking for, I used to say this when I was a Christian, I'm looking for a demon under every rock. They're looking for bad faith actors under every rock. And I guess what Peter is doing, or what anything that, not just Peter, but anyone doing that kind of having conversations about trans issues on campus, people associate you maybe with Stephen Crowder's, Change My Mind kind of things, or Ben Shapiro's conversation, not Ben Shapiro's, who was that person who released that documentary, What is a Woman?
Matt Walsh.
Matt Walsh, yeah. They're just associating those conversations with like the alt-right, so they're like very protective against, I guess, the transgender community that's being hurt by these things.
I can empathize with that.
Mm-hmm.
Although I wish they would be more open to conversation and less of the immediate strategy of just denouncing and calling names and ad hominems.
Yeah,
at least be open to conversation a little bit.
I was talking to Shannon Q about this when she was on, and it seems as though I worry. See, this is what I worry about, because I'm pretty progressive in my social politics, and kind of centrist in my economic politics, but I'm also a dummy when it comes to politics and sociology, so I have no idea. But what I find frustrating is that there are so many bad faith actors wanting to engage in these conversations about transgender issues, that what happens is they'll come to a conversation wanting to ask a serious question, like maybe like isn't gender just what's in your pants, or something like that, and someone may have that as a genuine question and they're seriously considering it because someone's told them, or they've thought this, but they're indistinguishable from a bad faith actor. So they're treated with like this like aggression from the left or from allies of the transgender community. And as a result, they're like screamed at by someone with blue hair. And then they turn around like, oh, I was just trying to ask a serious question. And then the alt-right are there with their open arms saying, told you, those crazy feminist lefties, they're all crazy, and they're there with open arms, welcoming them in. We've got you, brother. Do you know also that the Jews control the media? And do you know also that, so I worry that there's a shift happening there. But then at the same time, I think that it's kind of dog shit that the transgender community and like the LGBT community, like lesbians, gays, like have to fight so hard just for things like being able to marry, or like they have to justify their existence all the time. And 9 times out of 10, when someone comes to them with a question like, isn't gender just what's in your pants or just something like that. It is bad faith actors. It's someone who's watched too much Ben Shapiro and they think they've got like the own on trans people, and then they want to like kind of attack them over it. So yeah, it's a messy situation. I don't know if there's an answer to how to resolve it, but I agree with you. It'd be nice if people could engage in the conversation more critically. But I also think that, and this is just my personal opinion, that unfortunately it's hard to do that when there are so many bad faith actors at the moment on either side. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's hard. I think it's just better not to view demographic populations as political contingents or parties, or like there is never, the transgender community is it's a demographic population, not a political coalition. There is a diverse viewpoint from this whole set of people in this immutable characteristic population, potentially. And I'm sure if we had a random sampling of like 10 people from that population and put them in front of the spectrum game with the claim there are only two genders on it, I would love to see how that turns out. Would they all be on one line? I doubt it. What reasons would they have to be on the different lines? And people, that would be great to see if people are one way or the other. Like, people need to be persuaded, not shamed into their beliefs. And hearing people out and their reasons, especially if they're in that population, that would be great to see.
Interesting. People need to be persuaded, not shamed. That's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Like gay marriage, people were persuaded for reasons through a liberal process. People were talking to each other and making arguments. And that, there was some media, movies and TV shows that helped it along. But ultimately, someone who was gay and an activist could talk with someone, give an argument, and that person could then take on that argument and persuade other people about it. They don't need to have the characteristic themselves to have the moral argument for it.
It's funny. I have a graduate certificate, a degree in marketing, and so I view everything as brands. So for me, there's like there's a transgender brand, there's an LGBT brand, there's a white brand, there's a black brand, there's one of the biggest brands that is out there is natural/organic. That's a big brand they talked about in university, and it's like people, they're like sticky beliefs. And so when someone subscribes to one part of like natural or organic, right? Like they're like, oh, I'll get organic stuff from the fruit market. Then they're like, they stick themselves to the I like organic natural brand. And then that encompasses all these other beliefs that they don't necessarily think too much about, but they subscribe to. So then when someone tells them, vaccines aren't natural, they go, ooh, maybe vaccines aren't good, and they've associated themselves with this like brand. And I think that for the gay marriage thing, I think the brand of, this sounds horrible to talk about human beings like this, but I think this is how social species work. They view things in a certain way. And I think there was enough work in media, in the discourse, in liberal ideologies that let that brand of the gay brand, I guess, be popular enough that people were okay with it, that the majority who weren't LGBT we're okay with it. And I feel like that the transgender community have got a long way to go still in that regards, which is unfortunate because I think they're just people who want to live like everyone else and just and not be questioned about their identity.
Yeah, there's the fundamental issue of, do we want to imbue these immutable characteristics with meaning, or remove the meaning from these things? I think brown eyes has no meaning. You wouldn't care about the distribution of people with brown eyes in your workplace, and we want the same thing for brown skin eventually. In my mind, that's the liberal mindset. We want to remove the social significance from these things, not bolster them, not make them brands, in my mind.
Oh, I don't think it's not a prescription. The brands isn't a prescription. I need to clarify that. Just the same way survival of the fittest isn't a prescription. I'm more talking about it as the way people view things, like the way people who don't think about things too much find favor or don't find favor with certain things. Like Nazis become a brand, right? No one. The word Nazis become almost amorphous and doesn't mean anything because it's been used so much for things that aren't to do with the Nazis, you know. So someone disagrees though with you.
Cool.
I disagree. In Australia, it was a fact that our neighbours, in particular New Zealand, shamed our government into having a vote for us, a vote, and having a, I guess it's the gay vote. Half of us always supported it. So he's saying that the New Zealand government shamed the Australian government into having a plebiscite. So the plebiscite was like a mail out ballot to see if people supported same-sex marriage. I don't know if you call that shame.
They shamed the institution to have a mail-in ballot or something, or vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that would work on an institutional level, but I don't know. I don't think you can shame someone into changing their belief, because they're not changing their belief. They're not changing what they're convinced of. They're just being pushed into the other. Usually being pushed into the other side of things. Everyone's surprised that who's that guy, Kyle Rittenhouse, who killed those people in those protests. Everyone's surprised that he's now hanging out with alt-righters, and he's very. I'm not surprised. Like, you see the way that he was like vilified by the left. It's like, of course he's going to like be pushed further into the right. Same with Jordan Peterson. In my opinion at the moment, Jordan Peterson is essentially a partisan hack. But that's only because of the way the left has treated him, in my opinion. I could be wrong. I haven't looked into it. Don't quote me on that. But it just seems that way. It just seems that way. Anyway, let's jump back and let's roll things back a little bit. I've got a question. If you were doing SE with a racist, what factors do you look for to see if they are looking for honest dialect or if they are ignorant and won't change their minds?
If they're an honest actor, really SE applies to bad faith or good faith. You're mainly asking questions. You're not trying to give them an argument. Yeah, SE works fairly well with trolls because you're repeating back and getting clarity on the logic. And even if someone's trolling, you still just go through the argument and get clarity on it and critically think about it. But if people are watching, that it could be potentially beneficial. But if they're bad faith, you just kind of say, I don't think this is honest. I'd like to have an honest conversation. So I'm going to move on now. Something like that.
We did a review of a conversation I had with a racist person. I remember. I'm sure you remember as well, and that turned into an absolute shit show by the end. where like he eventually like kept commenting on my channel over like 10 times, like debate me, and I said okay, I will, like every time. Yep, jump on my Discord, I'll debate you anytime. And then I basically just put out a hit piece on him, like a totally non-SE, and then we got into like a screaming match where I just laughed at him the whole time, and it was the most satisfying thing ever. And I had like a really big conflict because I wanted to make SE style videos, but then I also wanted to be able to yell at racist online, because both of them were just equally as enjoyable to me. So my branding is a little bit confused with my channel.
Yeah, no worries.
So last question, and I like to ask this to everyone, unless someone asks another question to ask. But what is the most plausibly true religion you don't believe in?
I'm not that familiar with most religions. I guess Buddhism.
Everyone says Buddhism
because there's not much, there's not much empirical baggage there that's problematic. Okay, there might have been a guy that started it, but the commitments to it are not that bad. It seems to, and it also just seems to work psychologically for a lot of people. So that helps.
Yeah, but what about like the karma, the dharma, the reincarnation, the infinite lives until you become enlightened? Is that all?
Yeah, that's not ideal.
It's a hard question, isn't it? Because and I've asked Christians this, and it's an interesting question because it gets you to evaluate other beliefs.
Yeah. Greek gods?
I think I'll choose Greek gods. Really? For like Zeus.
I mean, if there's just a plurality of gods, and that explains potentially all the weird bad stuff that's happening. Random natural disasters. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know either. I think maybe I'm probably Buddhism, but maybe nothing. I'm thinking about Shintoism could be cool. Like Shintoism could, like, they have like, they have like 9 gods of rice, so there's like a life force in everything. Like everything has a life force, and so I guess that could be accurate, and that maybe that's the dark matter that we can't detect in the world, in the universe, or something. I don't know, but it's stepping out of the realm of faith and into the realm of science, like evaluating the ideas. You ask that question. Yeah. Well, Reid, thank you so much for coming on Deep Drinks Podcast. It's been a blast. This is now going to be my poolside drink. This is delicious. In fact, we bought a pool. It's summer. It's just coming into summer or late spring here in Australia. So we're just going to sit in the backyard pool with these drinks, me and my wife, and have a great Sunday afternoon. So thank you so much for coming on. It's been fascinating talking to you. Especially about the transgender stuff. I think there could have been a whole other conversation there. But is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
No, this was great. Loved it. Thanks, Dave.
Oh, awesome. All right. See you later, guys.